So, like last week, Greg and I interviewed Bill Stewart. Is his last name right?
Yeah, Bill. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, great guy. WPS Reptiles, absolutely fantastic guy. Had a really good conversation, and it was awesome. And those are the glimmering positive lights, right? The people we've interviewed so far, not a single one of them have been a hoarder or any of that style of negative situation.
Yeah.
What like do they exist? Of course they exist. But like does it go unspoken to the point where we have to like police ourselves better? I don't know what the fix all is, and I don't know what the problem actually is. The abdomen of that spider is directly on your head.
I know.
You couldn't have planned that any better, Greg, at all. It almost looks like you have a weird like carrot top fuzzy little pointy hair
If
top.
you
It's
if you had like some type of orange cap over your head or something, that'd be interesting.
priceless.
Oh, there
Uh,
we go. He's in the cave.
but like, at the end of the day, we owe it to the animals that we keep to do better. And part of the conversations that we have during this podcast are to do that. Some of the things that even have changed the way I look at the very animals I've been keeping for years. When we interviewed Lori Tarini and Amy Benzie, not to continually bring up those two specific ladies, um, but when we interviewed the two of them, both of them changed a lot of the way I approach different animals, and you know, it was like eye opening to say the very least. And I mean, Aaron, your own podcast episode that we did with you, like I didn't think about how drastically important educating the general public about the animals that are in our own backyards as far as frogs and amphibians in general are concerned. I always educate about reptiles, and after our podcast, I did purchase a couple of marine toads specifically to talk about, um, because I can utilize them in a South American show because that's where they're from, and I can utilize them in an invasive species show and explain to the general public about how they're destroying. I almost said Africa, how they're destroying Australia, and it's a whole different way. First of all, they are awesome, and they are as big as my hand, and that's just crazy. But it's a situation where we need the sharing of this information between positive influences in the reptile community needs to happen. Enough of this, all of us stay silent and let the hobby continue on doing what it's doing. Everyone needs to come together. And I mean, it's started, but it's not there yet. The true scientists of the hobby need to step up a little bit and stop being stuck in the shadows and the quiet worlds and doing their research. They need to be like Lori Tarini and try and change the perception of the general public. Even though I don't want to be public, I don't want people to know what I'm doing. I don't want people to have direct access to me. I'm not a public person. I'm a very shy, private individual. Not that you would ever get that from any of the things that I do publicly, but that's because in this facet of my existence, I can be public. In my life, I am not public and I don't want to be public, right? Nobody
Right.
knows about my children or their ages or their names, really. It's not like I brag about them all the time or talk about them on social media. And I think that kind of anonymity separates me from a lot of the other famous, real famous, of course, I don't mean in any way that I'm famous, but like the really public figures that are in this hobby. We've got it. We know, but now it needs to be addressed by the other voices, like Greg, with wanting to start this podcast talking about we are can advancing them advances or advancing us advances them. Period. Can we supply zoological quality care on an everyday human budget, on an everyday American budget at this point in life? Do we scale back? Do people keep one or two animals and put them in massive zoo quality enclosures? What the answer is has not been found yet, of course. But a lot of the different psychological and science backed things that are going on now, as far as research are concerned, changes everything. And if you take that information and you can't look at that information and realize like, oh, okay, what I did 20 years ago wasn't okay. I get that now. I understand it. If you can't make that change in yourself, then you're not doing what's best for the animal and you're not providing the proper environment for the animal at that point. And you have to really think about what you're going to do from here on in.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to like figure
Oh,
this
you're good.
out. I don't know why I'm like so. It looks so blurry, doesn't it?
You got some weird highlights too. It's probably just your camera's starting to go.
Oh, I got this thing not too long ago.
Is there a certain light reflecting from behind you onto the lens, maybe?
I think I know what it is. What time is it? 7:40.
There you go.
It makes it dark, but I mean,
Yeah, but you're much clearer now.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
what it was then.
yeah, you're not blurry.
Yeah, I am. I'm always blurry. Welcome to Blur. Well, I've talked for like 15 minutes, guys. It's your turn. No, I'm kidding.
Um, but Aaron, are you familiar at all with what the hell is it? Liam Sinclair from Reptiles and Research. He's from like
I'm not.
he's from like
What
the
does
UK.
he do?
That's a good question. I know. So his YouTube channel and like podcast are, I mean, it's similar to um the Animals at Home podcast, Dylan Perrin.
I do not. I'm sorry.
So how do I describe Reptiles and Research? Um
I mean, I guess the easiest way to describe it would be somebody who's got a collegiate background in not only biology, but also really deep dived into other facets of biology, like neurobiology and things like that, has begun to correlate a lot of different things that we may not think as cyclical between our own neurology, humans, and the animals that we're keeping. And some of the practices and the ways that we gather information, gain information, retain information, and so on, then become almost pseudoscience because it's been touted so many times. And he's trying to debunk a lot of that. Liam from Reptiles and Research, and as well as not only is he's utilizing facts and real information to back all of that up as well. And I think what Greg was hitting on was, do you, if you don't watch them between Dylan and Animals at Home and Liam, you probably should because they're both incredible. But the way that they're approaching this hobby is very different. And I mean, obviously it shows because they're not the ones telling you to go out and take 1 million animals off PetSmart's shelves or anything crazy, or buy this weird 500 gene morph, blah, blah, blah. These people are talking about the importance of enrichment within a racking enclosure to be able to stimulate the understanding and cognition of a ball python. Not to put too fine a point on it, Greg. I'm sorry. I tried to skirt it as long as I could, but
it's almost like he's trying to discover how care for something that's been cared for like 30 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like rediscovering, the proper ways to care for like a ball python. Like the most popular pet, like you know,
I think he's going about it in a
no, get back.
I think he's going about it in a less breeding money direction, you know, more of a this animal deserves to be cared for, you know, as if it was in a zoological display perpetually. You know, more of a, you know, this is your pet, not a money making machine or something along those. I don't know how to phrase it really really well, but I think that's as close as I'm going to get tonight.
I understand.
And I like it. You know, he came out hard on the scene. He's the guy that was you know, talking about how Nerd was doing things wrong and how all these other companies were doing things wrong. And I think his first couple videos were specifically about like spider morphs and their neurological disorders and all these different things. And you know, he basically was like going for the jugular the second he came out of the gate. And he took a step back. He got a lot of flack. Now he has repositioned himself and has produced some really awesome content that makes everybody who breeds ball pythons uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Sorry, that makes me laugh. I apologize for that. But when you look at Morph Market and you see 45,000 ads for baby ball pythons, and the next comparative snake species is corn snakes at 4,000,
Yeah.
you draw your own conclusions.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's sort of like breeders are just selling to each other, like back and forth, you know, and then then there'll be like a new breeder who will get in on it and, you know, produce this and that, and, you know, buy this and buy that. But yet when you go to like a pet store, you basically only see a normal ball python in a pet store, you know, or some very like basic thing. So like all these like insanely expensive ball pythons, they're just being shared amongst the breeders. And it's just, I don't know, it's uncomfortable sort of to me.
Yeah, I think we talked about that a little bit last time I was on. There's a lot that we can talk about with that. I think it all kind of goes to the same vein that we were just describing with even YouTubers. I think that breeding reptiles and amphibians and being a YouTuber are probably the formula that a lot of people look at whenever they want to get into this as a niche or as a genre, whatever you want to consider it. But it's just interesting, and you see a lot of the biggest name YouTubers, they have like racks and they've got just, you know, dozens upon dozens of tanks. Not that there's a problem with that, especially if you're able to manage it, but you know, it's just really interesting to think that uh, we're valuing quantity, not quality, in some ways. Because if I like imagine this, so if I have right now, like the game plan is to have 4 tanks and that's it. Like imagine being a YouTuber that's trying to make the animals the stars of the channel, but you only have 4 tanks. Like there's some scary things that can happen there, because you look at other YouTubers and they have to go through a list. Like, you know, you might not even see the same animal for 6 months before it comes back on the show.
Right.
Think about that's great, you know, for diversity, and that's great, you know, and some people will probably say, maybe I don't get it, but like you think about how much more of a relationship or how much more you can build your brand around certain animals, you know, and get people to actually be fans of them rather than, you know, I have to get another animal to get 10,000 views. It's like, no, look at this cool thing that, you know, this snake did or this frog did. And, you know, you're going to see that animal multiple times in a month, or you're going to see it, you know, as the carrier of this brand. And I think that it's kind of sad because there's very few places you can look to where we actually have that. I'm not faulting anybody at all. You know, I'm not envious. I'm not pointing the finger, but that's kind of crazy to put that into perspective. Like if I'm able to actually down the road become very successful, I'll have done it with native animals that a lot of people think is a dirty part of the hobby anyway,
I
legally, and then also with only a handful of tanks and featuring like
sorry.
just the best care possible, the largest tanks possible, like really um, interesting concepts of like smart technology and diversity of feeding them and all kinds of other stuff, and trying to bring more of that into the, if you want to call it the hobby. uh,
Yeah.
I think, you know, and also this is another thing, because I've been watching a little bit of your podcasts and stuff on Instagram. The idea of even mental health breaks. Imagine if you were able, you know, not necessarily to look at it in terms of the views in some respect, but I guess here let me even on what I'm just trying to say to give you an example. So Woods and Forests Media, you peel it back again. It's those 4 tanks, and we've got 3 shows. But you think about it, we're not in a category, we're not in a box. Like we're hiking, we're conservation, pet care. We have a lot of different things, and I think that in some respects is more healthy because I could go out and go hiking with my friends and fly my drone and can be completely away from that stuff. Or,
Right.
you know, I think the most, in my personal opinion, for me, what I struggle with, the unhealthiest part of it is when an animal dies, because I have so little of them and I put so much care into like each one of them. It's more personal for me. And then knowing that there's people out there, even though it's a smaller brand right now, but there are people who follow them from Greece, from Russia, from India, you know, and it's kind of crazy to think, you know, under 1,000 subscribers, but there's people out there that around the world that are following the story of these animals.
Mhm.
But you know, you put all that together. You know, they say about like sticking to one brand of videos and one category, and you guys are doing a great job of not doing that either. I think that being unorthodox sometimes sets you apart, and it helps you to be more successful. It might take longer, but you know, we're not defining success necessarily by overnight achievements. It could be a slow burn type of a thing and still be acceptable or successful or beneficial.
I your story of slimming down, well, not slimming down, but in your case maintaining only 4 enclosures. It's one of those situations that I bring up the there's a YouTube channel that I watch and I get a huge kick out of it. It's Leon the Lobster. I don't know if either of you
Yeah,
watch it.
yeah. I've seen that.
Listen, this guy
Seen
has
that.
one tank and he's got a store-bought food lobster that he has maintained in his aquarium that he brought home and set this whole aquarium up for just this lobster to save its life. And like all of his videos have millions of views and
Yeah.
it's amazing. And I think that's one of those recipes for success. Did this guy who shoots and edits pretty decently, did he go into that store planning to buy a lobster to then become YouTube famous? No, absolutely not. This guy went and saved a life, and you can hear how genuine and normal. And again, here's the circumstance where he only has one animal. He's publishing one video a week, but because this lobster is something that every person has seen in a grocery store, it becomes a mainstream focus of a large group of people. And I think to some degree, that is what drives his channel. And I'm sure that's what's going to drive your channel as well. Greg and I's channel, in terms of the podcast, is very specific. We only have about 1 million people that are as into reptiles, that are as like-minded as we are out of the entire population of the world. Um, and that's giving it a lot of leniency. Could be more, could be less, I'm not sure. But when you're trying to appeal to a very specific ideal and understanding, unless that ideal resonates with your target audience, it becomes it doesn't become what it should become, right? There's so many YouTubers out there that I love. Clint, for an example, compared to Clint's Reptiles compared to Ed and Emily. Ed and Emily have gone into the stratosphere as far as views and how many people watch their channel. And that's what's the name of that?
Snake Discovery.
That's it, Snake Discovery. Thank you. So Snake Discovery has millions of views, hundreds of thousands of views on every video, yada yada yada. Meanwhile, Clint from Clint's Reptiles is an actual biologist with a doctorate, and he gets very middle ground views, 30,000, 50,000, 100,000, something like that. He doesn't have anywhere near the following, but he's got entertaining videos. He presents scientific information. He talks about species in a way that's very intriguing to me. But because he's not making his videos cater towards the general pet population, pet parent population, whatever you want to call it, his videos don't get the same play. And some people may not like his style. He is very quiet and laid back by comparison. I think it has to do with both of those things. It has to be entertaining as well as content needs to be proper and good. As well as all the other YouTube things that go along with that. The video quality, audio quality, all that kind of stuff. And I think that magic spark doesn't necessarily happen when you don't have a large enough group of people that find that appealing. My case is snakes. Nobody likes my snake content most of the time. And that's fine. Snakes are inherently negative when it comes to just about everything, especially when you're not posting a venomous snake rearing up or hooding up like a cobra or whatever the negative view of that animal would be. It doesn't appeal to the masses because those masses want to see that snake as an aggressive, assertive, dominant, negative, evil entity. Frogs have never really been thought of as negative or evil. They're cute and rather adorable. So a lot of people are going to flock to that. When you show a big old boa eating a rat, forget it. Like it just people are like, oh my God. In 20 years of owning reptiles, I've never posted a video of an animal feeding.
That's amazing.
I have taken 10,000. I just know better. And when I say animal, I mean serpent, just so we're clear. I'll send video of lizards eating all the time. But it's really just, it's a sad fact that, sometimes the algorithm favors things that are not really as educational as some of the other things that are presented the same way. Or presented in a fun, more direct way. I guess the old adage would be when you're telling people that you can keep 100 snakes in a rack, and then somebody comes along and says, well, you probably shouldn't do that. It's not really good for them. And then everybody jumps on that person when they make a video.
Yeah.
It's because you've been told one thing, shown one thing, and because of the longevity and the successful abilities of this person to present that information, if you can't match that presentation of information and quality of information, then you're nobody. And who cares? Who cares what you have to say?
So I have something really crazy to share with you guys. So
Awesome.
Let's turn the clock back to about 2018. So
Okay.
I think I'm in my first year at my undergrad or second year, something like that. And I was on YouTube, but I wasn't really taking it seriously. It wasn't something that I was trying to ever look at like, oh, I want to be famous or monetize or do whatever. It was just kind of like, something that'd be fun. It started out like just something for fun. More so for me and a couple people as I was on Frog Forum, Dendra Board, and our Reptile Forum and stuff like that. So I'd post, because I like doing that. It was almost like I don't want to say a diary or a journal, but like you got the chance to see some of the animals that I talked about. And it didn't occur to me until 2018 after I started having problems with Ace that there were parasite issues. And as you guys have seen on Instagram and somewhat on YouTube, Ace has been the driving force of the YouTube channel before she got sick. And from 2018 to now, you can look and there's very little information about Ace at all. So imagine watching a story where the main character is not a part of the season, maybe for 5 seasons or 5 years, however you want to, or whatever.
What drew you there to begin with may not be there. Yeah.
Exactly. And as I was having problems with parasites and trying to get things like figured out, I kept the pets off of the channel for the longest time. And that was what the brand at that point was built around, was just a couple enclosures and the animals. So then it's like, well, I had to find something else that would keep it alive, or that would give me that interest to stay on YouTube. I never thought about leaving. It was more so like, what can I actually do now to transition? And again, I didn't look at it from the perspective of like dollar signs and views. It was more so like, because I just wanted to do it. I just wanted to have fun with it.
Right.
So the conservation project, Frog Week, it was 2019. So you go a couple years down the road now. The animals are all in quarantine enclosures, so they're smaller tanks, probably larger than some people keep their animals in permanently for these species, like native species. But I wasn't going to show, in my opinion, it was distasteful to show them in quarantine, because I just, it's not what I wanted to show, because I felt bad for the animals having to go through that.
Yep, I feel the same way about the animals that are quarantined at the rescue.
Yeah, and and again, I have some in quarantine right now that I won't show. But anyway, I had to figure something out. Like, what am I going to do? How am I going to keep this thing afloat? So the idea of hanging out with some people that go herping, and then trying to turn this into something, trying to figure out how can I help some of these animals. So I kind of went into it from a different angle. You're talking about like repositioning and repurposing things. Then it became, well, the whole brand was actually just going to be, for a couple years, carried by Frog Week. That was going to be, I think, like 2019, 2020, the majority of the videos, as things were winding down and animals either were getting sick or getting through it or whatever, like they weren't making appearances. So for a couple of years, we didn't have our like fully functioning channel. It wasn't like it was today, or how it's going to be even in a couple of months when the big tank is done. But it's pretty crazy that if you think about it, I started with like maybe 50 subscribers, and we're closing in now on 1,000 subscribers in the 5 years of doing the conservation project. And literally the whole channel, the whole brand was because of the conservation project. And even deeper, what came out of that was a nonprofit. We actually formed PA Woods and Forests, more so from the conservation aspect of things. So
to be able to give back and help and do things. Yeah, absolutely.
So it becomes something really crazy if you think about it. Like, yes, 100%, I'm a very small brand, but we have not had a day and a time where the channel has been, or even the Instagram has been, at its complete strongest. Like, we've never had our peak yet. And we went from 400 subscribers last year. We're approaching 1,000 right now.
Yep. And that
crazy.
all comes with time. Also,
Yeah. You think about it. I think what really was the game changer, a couple of different things. I think bringing Ace back into the shorts, because I don't want to tell a story yet that's not finished. And that's going to be, we'll talk about that in a moment, but I could bring her into the shorts, I found out. And as I brought her into the shorts, now there are 2 videos that she got, her very first 2 shorts, and they both reached 11,000 views. And for a small channel, she's like got 2 of the top 5 videos between videos and shorts all time. Like, my original main one was like 14,000, and there's one from last year's Frog Week, a short. It has 28,000 views, and then nobody's going to touch that right now, at least. But the 2 with Ace back to back, where they hit 11,000, and it goes to show, like, YouTube likes Ace. Yep. YouTube will push Ace. Yep. And so will Instagram.
My biggest short, like by a million miles, is one of my South American horn frog. Like, out of all the things I posted.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. It's just interesting. They just have a big fan base, especially on Instagram. You look at the Pac-Man frogs, and you look at even the African bullfrogs and stuff like that. But it's just crazy. I guess where I was trying to put a cap in this, put a pin in this like situation here. What I'm trying to say is, it's crazy to think that we've had success. We've created a channel in a way like if you think about it, the audience that I have, they're used to, depending on where you came in to subscribe, and the majority of the people have come in after, but they're used to seeing pets and conservation going hand in hand. And I think because I've had the chance to stay out of any boxes, kind of because of how do I want to put this, like sad, like unfortunate circumstances that my animals got sick, and
Right.
so they couldn't be a part of it. But in the long run, that's kind of what has allowed me to come up with this idea of creating a YouTube channel that is built more like a Hulu or a Netflix, where I look at it more as an executive director position. Like, if you want to see pet care for frogs and toads, I got that, and I'll teach you that. If you want to see hiking, I got a friend who is great at hiking, and now I got a drone license, and we'll take you out there. You want to see a conservation project and see how my passion in frogs and toads at home and also out in the field kind of runs together, how it feeds itself. We have that. Like, we have a lot of different media that people are out there searching for. Like Greg, you say you like herping stuff, and Frog Week, I shared with Brian. I think Brian will tell you it's a bit different than it's ever been. And
I'm not going to go any further into it than say it was good. That's it. I'm not going to describe anything. I'm not going to give you can see it when it comes out, or take Aaron up on his offer that he messaged you earlier.
Yeah,
I was very entertained, and the first episode was just shy of 20 minutes. Minus, I can't really sit still for 20 minutes. Aside from that, it was good.
Now, did you have the chance to see episode 3 yet, or are you still working through it?
No, I'm on 2. I haven't even started 2. I only watched the first one.
Okay, because I sent episode 1 and episode 3.
I think you only sent me 2 episodes, but I
Yeah.
thought it was. Yeah, is it 1 and 3? Okay.
Yeah,
I couldn't remember if it was 2 or 3.
yeah, episode 1 and episode 3. Yeah, episode 1 is pretty crazy.
I very much enjoyed. I don't want to talk about it. I enjoyed it. I'm just going to leave it at that. No, I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to spoil it at all. And especially since I plan to help it and hype it and get it going, I definitely don't want to share it right now.
I got you. How's this gonna work out for you guys? Is this gonna be like a podcast, or is this gonna be an addition to what we're gonna talk about potentially during the time Frog Week comes out? Like, are you planning to keep all this together, and then whenever that week ends up coming out, like, you're gonna post this, or like,
I'm not
what's the
sure
game
what
plan?
we're going to do with this exact one right now. I think
Okay.
it was more of maybe just pull a couple snippets out and talk about the hobby in general.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Just so that way, I don't like either go too far or not
Greg,
go far enough.
What do you think, Greg?
Well, before I've got to interrupt this whole thing just because I wanted to tell you, Aaron, that I work at the Caterpillar machines, the construction machines. I work at a Caterpillar dealership, and so we have stuff that comes from our branches in New York. We're in Connecticut. The rest of our branches are in New York State. But we also get stuff from York, Pennsylvania. And I saw a gray tree frog hop out of the night truck 2 days when was that? It was this week anyway. And it was freezing cold. I mean, it wasn't freezing cold because it's not that cold out, but it was super cold. It was hopping so slow. It was like dark. It was like green. It's a gray tree frog, but it was like green, like dark. Like, it was obviously trying to absorb some heat. So I grabbed it because I know that I know that they're local here. Not local. What's the word?
Native. Yeah.
Native.
You're
They're
right.
native,
That's good.
In my backyard.
Local's fine.
But it's from I don't know, New York or Pennsylvania, so I didn't want to put it outside because I don't want to introduce any pathogens or any whatever to this population here. So I brought it home, and I was just going to show you this if it comes up. Yeah. Yeah, you can see it, right?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
It's a nice looking one. Yeah, you
Wow,
got
that's
yourself a winner.
fat frog.
Well, this looks complete. This was after like 2 hours of having it. It looks completely different than when I first saw it, which I don't have a picture of, unfortunately.
So are you planning it to keep it then?
Well, so what I was thinking about is because it's loud.
Oh, it's a male.
It's extremely loud. Yeah. Um, so I'm gonna try and grin and bear it for like 3 months, maybe. And then I'll probably let it go. But just because it's so loud. But I gotta wait, before I do anything like that, I have to wait. I don't want to infect any, you know, the population like local to me, so that's why I have to, let it kind of quarantine.
So do you not have any at all interest in keeping it?
I mean, not really, just because it's so loud. No, really, that's
They are very loud when they are indoors.
I mean, it's worse than hearing a bunch of them outside because it's inside. It's loud with the door closed and everything. It's like loud.
I wake up to it infrequently. I'll give you another story in a minute, but whenever I rescued this other male gray tree frog, and he's like, I think the term is crepuscular, evening and morning. He's out and active, but yeah, I get it at like 7:30, 8 in the morning, maybe sometimes 6. But I think it's because I keep frogs. It's not a problem. What I'll tell you is this though, it doesn't have to be breeding season for them to call. So like I've had snowstorms, and sometimes my gray tree frogs in the past, the males were more active during heavy snowstorms, which makes sense because of like pressure and stuff. But even in the wintertime though, like I heard them call sometimes more. So you're saying about 3 months, that frog could potentially call. I don't want to say indefinitely, but he could call frequently for the next like 6 months. Like he could just, once a week or every so many days, he could just, start feeling it and want to call. Or if he's a dominant frog.
I just meant 3 months of like quarantine. 3 months, in case it has any, parasites or anything. That 3 months meaning like I won't make any decision with what's going to happen for 3 months because I don't want to infect any other,
Yeah, no, I get that.
Makes sense.
I understand that.
Yeah,
I think you get a lot of joy out of it.
Warn everyone, I am going to leave at about 8:30.
That's okay. Yeah, we can wrap up at 8:30. It's all right. Well, can I give you a story about a gray tree frog since you brought it up?
Certainly can.
Sure.
So this is going to relate to Frog Week, but it's also going to relate to other things as well. So in Cambria and Somerset counties in Pennsylvania, the eastern gray tree frog had never been documented, and there are surveys currently going on, and there's been historic surveys over the last like 50 years, and people had not found it because it's called like the Laurel Highlands region, so I'm in the mountains, and like I had kept these animals for years before they were discovered or anything like that in these counties. I've grown up, never seen them in the wild because where I live, like they're just not here. And just most places I was going to, they were never there. So there was a lot of questions that I had in undergrad when I was asking the professors, like, well, hey, why aren't they here? Like, why don't we see them? Like, why hasn't anybody found them yet? And all kinds of questions came up, and oh, could have been this or could have been that. And I'm like, I can't like not believe that they're not in this county or in the other one just south of us. So I kind of took it upon myself, because I keep them and because I really care about them and want to see them succeed. To It's almost like Jeremy Wade with what River Monsters, how he did detective work. Somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, kind of like, overlooking them, like, oh, it's just a frog. Well, I found the right people that knew where these animals were, and I was actually able to be the first person to discover them in both of those counties. Now, those discoveries happened during Frog Week, which is pretty neat. And I can't even begin to tell you how much it means to me personally. I mean, imagine your favorite reptiles, and you are the first person to do something scientifically, even if it's novel, to bring something new to science and say, they're actually found on mountains too. They're not just a valley species, or for wherever your animal would be located. Imagine finding it in a completely different biome. Like, it's pretty neat. And
very neat.
We had the chance to turn the tables on a lot of that stuff. They're not just a valley species like everybody thinks. They probably thrive in the valleys compared to the mountains, but they can hang in there. But anyway, it leads us to the current situation today. So in the one population in Cambria County, there's a guy that owns a lot of land, and of course this story always happens, right? And he's deforesting it. Well, he deforested the bottom part by a stream. He left certain trees far enough away that he wouldn't get in trouble, created some holes in the ground, and that's where the gray tree frogs were calling and reproducing. So they came out of the forest to breed there. And we're like, he's done, it's fine. Like, a couple years have gone by, and I'm just trying to monitor the population. Well, this year he decided there's a hillside, and he's going to start destroying the hillside. So the gray tree frogs came down from the hillside, and there are neighbors on both sides of this property that understand the importance of conserving this species, because it's the only population in the county that we know of, like, ever to exist. Like, they might not be in other parts that we know of yet. So this guy who owns this land could potentially be responsible for wiping out an entire species without any care, because they're not protected. So to me, I'm trying to cover it in episode 4 of Frog Week. And there was a night, this happened by accident. So I got a GoPro, I strapped it to my chest, and I'd been telling people, like, listen, I can track gray tree frogs calling up to 1.25 miles away. And some people were like, yeah. So I said, all right, I'm going to go and do it. I'm going to put it on Frog Week. So I go out, and I have the GoPro, and I start at the top of the hill, and I start hearing them, and they lead me to their direction. So I got what I was asking for on film. But on my way back up, I went on the road where they're doing the timber harvesting, and it was still active at that time. So I heard about 13 American toads and 4 gray tree frogs calling. So I'm thinking to myself, I can't just leave them and get run over tomorrow. Even if these animals go and hide in the ditches, well, the ditches could be destroyed. So they're going to be run over by big machines and going to be clear cutted. So I walked about 2 miles to my car, and I took it the whole way back around. I came through this closed, abandoned road, and I actually pick them up. This is on Instagram too. You can watch the reel. But I pick up all the animals and scoop them up, and I take them about 500 yards away to these ponds where I had seen snapping turtles. So I know that, it's good, and there were great tree frogs and toads calling all around these ponds. Right. So not very far away from where they were. Anyway, so I take them down there, and I'm unloading the toads, and I'm unloading the great tree frogs. And there happens to be this one great tree frog. I set him on the tree, wanted nothing to do with them, right? They're free. I have hundreds of thousands of encounters with wild frogs and toads. Anyway, set him on the tree, and he jumps on me. He must think I'm a big tree or something, right? So I'm like, all right, it's a fluke. And I just put him on the tree again. He turns around to me, and he jumps on me again. And I'm like, okay. So this is a longer story we can get into, but I had a water crisis with the reverse osmosis system. I ended up losing a couple of my gray tree frogs due to the water system. And anyway, long story short, I have availability on my permit to bring in gray tree frogs if I wanted to. And I didn't really know when it would happen, but I was just kind of like, well, when it presents itself to me, then I'll know, and and I'll take advantage of the opportunity. So to be fair to this animal, I held up my hand just like this, like I didn't do anything like to manipulate him. And I said, "No, if you want to come with me, buddy, let's go. Like you can. Here's your chance." He got on my hand. To this day, I have never seen another frog or toad that has ever done that. But I figured, okay, so here's a population that I had the chance to seriously impact. Maybe one of the only people in the world that cares about this population. I'm one of the few people that knows that they exist out there. And now I have a representation of that whenever I go and do presentations, and and he's going to have the chance to impact a lot of people. So I found out this later, but I gave him I guess it's the feminine version of hope in Spanish. His name's Esperanza, and apparently I didn't give him the masculine version of the word. I don't know if there is, but I liked the name. I liked what it represented, because his population of his peers are still thriving despite all of this construction happening, despite a guy who owns their probably whole area where these animals exist, because they don't usually travel far. They're more of like a cluster species, which means if you take down 50 trees, you might take them all down. Anyway, I named him that because of that night, and because of seeing how many great tree frogs were still out there, and what was still taking place despite the deforestation and the problems. So that's going to be in Frog Week, and
That's pretty neat.
it's a crazy story. And I think that speaks much louder what we're talking about with the hobby here. You get to see conservation taken home, and you get the chance to see conservation shared with communities, because he is like the perfect example of what putting a name to a face, or a face to a name, or whatever, putting a title on something. So you see something is in danger and it needs help, and you see him, and now we kind of have more of a talking point to get people interested. And I think that that's really special.
I agree.
So just sorry to take up a lot of time, but just wanted to share that story.
Fine. But I definitely agree. I think that's an exceptional story. I think it's a great creature to bring with you to educate the general public. And if it wasn't for the fact that I'm sure the situations of keeping captive animals in Connecticut is similar to New York, I'm sure Greg would contemplate keeping his little new acquisition as well. But
are you not allowed?
At the end of the day, it's one of those situations that he's maintaining the population that lives around him safely is really what it comes down to. This is an animal that could transport any kind of potentially biological disaster into the population that exists there. So it's a really good thing that Greg is mindful of it. Anybody else would have just said, "Oh, look, a frog," and it jumped off. And maybe it could have poisoned the whole population that lived right around his building.
Everybody at work.
It's one. I've found something more and more prevalent, and I don't mean to take up the last moments of the podcast here with this, but at the end of last week, I had done a few look backs at what we've taken in this past year. And, at the end of the day, like every year we get one or two animals found in the wild. Somebody's pet was let go, somebody put it outside to get sun, and then it escaped. Clearly it's a pet that's healthy and someone was taking care of it and so on. Anyway. So after the couple of months I've had, I just needed to know. And we took in 13 animals last year. That were, in the last 10 months, that were either wild or found in the wild in various stages of health or condition or what have you. That is a number that should not exist.
Yeah.
In New York State. Because it goes from tegus to savanna monitors to bearded dragons, ball pythons, red-eared sliders. Red-eared sliders are one thing. If you pick them up and they're native here now at this point, they live here. They're invasive, but they live here. And since they're, according to DEC, they're not a threat, they don't care. It's weird. But um it's one of those situations where I don't feel that number should be that high in
Mhm.
10 months. That's more than one a month.
That's bad.
I mean, it just goes to show you that if it wasn't for our weather, we'd have the same problem that Florida does.
Oh, easily. Everybody would. We have invasive lizards in Pennsylvania. We have invasive geckos and Italian wall lizards and yellow and
we
red
have
belly
those in Connecticut,
sliders.
too.
Do you have the wall lizard?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
crazy.
they're in Southwest Connecticut.
Um, I just wanted to ask you real quick, Greg. So, are you not able to own any native species under any circumstances?
No. So, I'm not good at like legalese stuff, but my understanding from research is that I don't know. See, I don't know if in the way the law reads is it says possess. Now, does that mean possess like at a time, like on your person? Like if I'm out herping, like can I possess a eastern hognose snake, or does that mean I can possess it like at my house? So that's the part I'm not too sure about. Um, I don't think there's anything explicitly that states, about a frog that you can't. Like I'm pretty sure
Just
you
as
can
long,
find a
yeah. I
frog
mean,
outside and just take it home. It doesn't matter, basically. That's my understanding of it.
if it says you can possess it, it means like home. It's talking about home. Um,
Because
without a,
surprisingly,
oh, go ahead.
surprisingly, the law on eastern hognose snakes, it says no one shall possess more than one.
So you can
And
own one.
so it's sort of shocking to me because it's very uncommon. Its population is very sporadic in the state. So it sort of surprises me that it says that.
You know something crazy? In Pennsylvania, you can get a permit to own one rattlesnake. Like, what's it called? The timber rattlesnake. You can actually own one. You can own one. I think it has to be up to like 42 inches or more. But to me, that's crazy that somebody could literally get a permit. You're going out on some mountain and you're going to grab this rattlesnake and you're going to put it in a bag. You're going to take it home.
PA has no legalities in terms of venomous reptiles at all. Anything exotic is fair game in PA,
except for townships. My friend had hots. He lived in one township, and there are
right. There are
rules
certain
in the township.
Right, there are certain cities and towns that are now jumping on this bandwagon. Which, I mean, can you blame them? It's like the Wild West in PA. You can go to Hamburg Reptile Expo and buy a mamba.
Oh, I'd never been there, so I didn't even know that.
I don't even really know what to say to that. I don't think of it as a bad thing because, let's face it, there's 3 Hamburg shows a year. You don't hear about a whole bunch of people dying from black mamba bites.
That's true.
So at the same point in time, is PA doing a better job at policing themselves because they are legal animals and because it's not the allure of something illegal, nobody needs to have it? Or what is the circumstances? Are there places that I'm sure have them? Of course there are. I'm sure there's tons of people in PA that have venomous snakes that are illegal everywhere else in the country. But at the end of the day, I mean they're doing it kind of the right way for whatever facet that may sound weird after this conversation. But there's this many shows a year with alligators and caiman and crocodiles and all kinds of things that are for sale on those tables every few months. And you're not hearing about everybody dying from a monocle cobra bite or a spitting cobra or a king cobra for that matter. It's nobody's getting emaciated by or eviscerated by rattlesnakes or so I with the amount of people that are keeping venomous snakes in PA, I would think that it would be a lot more of a problem, and big constrictors for that matter. Do you hear about everybody and their brother being choked to death by a Burmese python? Because I'm sure there's tens of thousands of them across Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, it's this. I mean, Greg, even you guys in Connecticut can own constrictors, large constrictors.
Burmese, that's
Um,
it. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, 18 feet and 200 pounds, that's a pretty large constrictor,
Yeah.
Yeah.
regardless of the species name. But that's like that's a potentially harmful animal.
Oh yeah.
It really is. The largest
I've
snake that we can have here in New York is a boa,
so
legally,
it's interesting
without
because
without licensing.
I've actually felt not not threatened, you know, like directly by my sub-adult carpet python, but there have been a couple occasions where she's slithering around and she goes around my neck and it's
Mm.
tight. That's they are insanely strong. Where it's like if this was a bigger snake and I could not like pry it off, like I would be dead.
That's the
Right, right,
crazy
right.
part about it. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like, I think there's a good chance that the people that do own large constrictors in their homes know what they're doing, you know?
Yes, absolutely. I feel there's a lot of they get very bad reputations for something that is way less harmful than somebody's pet dog.
Mm.
Have kids been killed by constrictors in captivity? Yes. How many people have been killed by pet dogs
Yeah.
in the United States?
Right.
Do the math. It's an insane number, just so
Yeah.
we're clear, compared to the what, like 4 deaths in the last 10 years from giant constrictors. I, I when you make an argument, you have to know the facts. And, yes, is a giant Burmese python something you can sensationalize and create fear and get them to ban them and make them illegal? And yeah, yep. Where's the ban on dogs if they kill more people? Where's the ban on cars if they kill more people? Where's the ban on all of these other things, like can do way more damage, but because a snake is scary, they feel the need that this is a situation that they need to control. Most people that are in a situation that think their snake is they're not going to harm them, or most of the people who get in over their heads with a large constrictor are like, holy hell, this thing is 8 feet long and it's nasty, I need to find a new home for it right now. Those are the people, most of the time, that's what happens. The people who are complacent, they don't necessarily follow the normalcies of what goes on in a normal pet household to begin with. They're probably the same people that were cited by the SPCA's for their dogs being skinny or left outside or what have you. It's just the fact that you can't see it, the animal, the snake, because it's in their house all the time. You don't know how the care is. You don't know what's
Yeah.
going. It's just a very frustrating scenario when you don't have all the facts. I mean, I can remember back when the Lacey Act was just being amended and everybody was everybody was losing their damn mind about all of it. And here in New York State, we were fighting our own set of legislations at the same time in 2005, where they were basically banning everything that got big. And while I still saw a bunch of those animals, right? I still saw gators, I still saw berms and retics. Um, a lot of the other stuff like Asiatic water monitors and things that would have been much more large and way more time consuming, they didn't really seem to come in a lot. They weren't here. People didn't want them. People didn't buy them. I think the situation's changing now. People with Nile monitors seems to be
Yeah.
one of the new conversations I've gotten into lately. It's a very frustrating endeavor. But if you make something illegal, then people want it. There's always going to be a criminal element to that's going to really enjoy owning something that they say, hey, this is illegal. You want to come see my 12-foot berm? It is what it is. Like a 12-foot berm is no more dangerous than a 200-pound Rottweiler. At least the Rotweiler, or at least the Berm, can only kill one person at a time. That Rottie could enter a room and pretty much take out everybody without being stopped unless somebody had a gun. I've been around enough aggressive dogs to know what they're really capable of. And I find it to be a real shame that a lot of what happens in this country as far as legislation and legalities are based in an unknown component, whereas we have a known component of something else that's way worse,
Oh my God.
Oh, Kitty's back. He's your familiar. Are you do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He's gonna take down this freaking green screen. Yep. Get down.
Oh goodness.
Oh.
I want to say two things real quick, if that's okay. So, Brian, you watched episode 1,
Correct.
and there's 2 running things this year that I want people to find in Frog Week, and I don't know that people will actually notice this unless you're really looking for it. The first one I'm going to go ahead and say, because the first one is kind of funny. The first one, I don't know why this came up so much, and it's not really important, but this one site that I was doing conservation at, there's always this one bird that built a nest in these cattails. And so for the first 3 episodes, I think, it might not be in episode 3, but the first 2, I'm like, at some point when I was recording, I'm like, oh, there goes a bird. So I'm trying to like kind of make that like a funny running thing. If you see it in Frog Week, like you'll know why I keep doing it, because it's just kind of one of those funny things. Like, oh, like what is it? What is the importance of the bird?
Egg.
Yeah, it's an Easter egg. The other one that I'm purposely putting in all 8 episodes has to do with poachers. And you'll see, and I'll give you guys an exclusive and maybe like a couple other places, but I'm not gonna go in detail with this for everybody. I'm doing that because at the same time with what you just talked about, with all of the good stuff that's happening in Pennsylvania, there are some poachers out here that are very close to where I live, and they have a tendency to take wild frogs and toads, which is illegal, and feed them to their exotic venomous snakes, and then sell those snakes to people. And
that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, and so.
Oh my God. Sorry.
The cat.
He's got the zoomies right now. Like, so sorry.
It's all right. But I kind of wanted to kind of lead in with that and say like that's something maybe even more of a talk off camera, but I think that's something that is important also to keep in the back of your minds too. Like, some of these guys who were doing this at Reptile Expos, it's not all, like you're saying, legal, and they're not all following the same rules that everybody else is. So, and becoming aware of that's a crazy picture to paint. Let's say I raise these tadpoles and these are now young frogs, and I got a 5-gallon bucket and I'm taking them out and I'm smiling saying be free, and in 5 minutes another car comes down the road with a 5-gallon bucket and he's taking all those frogs in and he's saying, here, my snakes, like, eat. Yep. I'm not trying to demonize snakes in any means, but for the act of what some of these people are doing is wrong. And
I mean, especially if it's something endangered. Not to quantify endangered being the end all of that scenario, like, that could create a species of endangered animals because of that act. If this person, this unnamed poacher, goes to the same vernal pool every year and wipes out half the population, eventually that population will not be able to rebound, simply because there aren't enough individuals that are making it to adulthood to continue the procreation of that species at that vernal pool. Yeah. And that becomes a really big situation.
So that's why I kind of make that claim. It's funny because people will do their own kind of commercials, and I'm not doing that. Like, they have ads in YouTube channels, like in the videos. Well, I just felt like I needed to say it just as a part of me feeling like I need more, like to take on a little bit more responsibility by doing this, by bringing attention to these animals.
I think if you tout that line and you explain to people that this is happening, it could potentially put somebody off from buying that said frog eating venomous snake in a Hamburg show, for example. Oh, where do you source your animal? All of these guys were fed with captive bred frogs from a different source. Blah 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 blah, from Josh's frog, not Josh's frogs. That was a terrible analogy, but from it was just the first. It was, look how red faced I am. It was just the first frog company I could think of. But like, I know there's tons of frozen frog feeders out there, that you can purchase legally from a captive bred source, which I would tout regardless of the wildlife side of that argument, because you have no idea what a wild animal carries.
Yeah.
Period. And especially amphibians. That's one of the reasons why I like frog legs. I do eat them, but I don't really eat them often because they're not a very clean species of animal. They're not. They live in some really interesting places, and who knows how that frog was obtained, depending on what restaurant you're in. Now, are they captive bred? You don't know, but if they are, that might be worse sometimes.
Yeah.
We do live in the mass production of meat country, but when you talk about that, you need to talk about that. You need to bring that up to everyone you can. You need to say it out loud, and you need to keep that going, because that right there, that's one of those things that I don't think a lot of people are going to understand or know.
So you think I do need to run with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think not only that, but I think it goes directly in hand with the whole conservation message. Exactly the way you just said it to us, period. I will bring this bucket of tiny froglets, let them go, but what does it matter if the car behind me is coming to grab a tiny bucket of froglets to feed their snakes? Because they think it's an acceptable way to do that. I really think you phrased it really well. I mean, polish it up a little bit, of course. You said it much better than I did. But yeah, I think it's a really good slogan to go with too. I think it's a really good conservation message, like I've already said. And I think it's a really good, I think it would get a lot of people to your side. And be aware of what's going on. Even here in New York State, I'm sure there's people that do that to feed certain species. Hognose, what do they call them now, Greg? The hognose that you have. It's not a Western anymore. They call
it's
them
a plains
different.
hognose.
Plains. So plains hognose
broken up
babies,
into like 4 different.
Yeah, plains hognose babies are like notoriously hard to get feeding. And a lot of people have used like scented toad or scented frog or something like that. Where did those frogs and toads come from? Could it be the middle of America somewhere in their backyard? What are they doing? And I think it's just another thing that you could use as a liberty call, as a understanding of the plight of wild frogs across the world, toads and frogs, of course. I just think that's a good line. That's a really good thing to run with, especially since it isn't something that a lot of people think about.
Yeah.
And it's directly relatable for the hobby too. So like that'll appeal to the people who are in this hobby doing what they're doing as well. Maybe bringing an awareness to it'll keep somebody from doing it because they didn't know anybody knew they were doing
it. Catching them in the act in a way.
Yeah. Kind of like, I see you. I know what you're doing. That is not okay to the population that lives there, regardless of the species. But I am going to take my leave. Aaron, again, thank you for jumping on last minute. Really appreciate it. I hope you had a great time. I definitely can't wait to see more of Frog Week or watch
what it
Frog.
Is.
I can't wait to watch Frog Week when it comes out. No, but I can't wait to watch more Frog Week. It was an awesome first episode that you shared with me way early, and I appreciate it. When is that going to be aired again, by the way? You might as well say it out loud.
Yeah, no problem. July 31st, August 6th. It's going to be 1 episode a day. That's last Saturday. We're going to have a 2-part conclusion. First time ever for Frog Week. But yeah, expect to see all kinds of conservation, keeping them as pets and road rescues, taking them to wildlife rehabilitation centers, filming the actual environment through drones, weather stations, 4K binoculars, people coming in from other states to come and be a part of it to help. There's all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot for just about anybody who's interested in nature to take this up and find some part of it fascinating.
Absolutely. They are the stars of the show. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and we'll definitely talk again soon. Greg, if you want to stop recording, go for it.